We've been building on different skills that you need to incorporate sources into your writing, whether it be a report or a larger research paper. And this week you're introduced to the GNTC library databases. You may recall from past lessons, I believe that we may have gone over this, that we talked about how to find online resources, and we talked about the value of using Google and Bing and other what we call popular search engines. And we also talked about the difficulties, because part of the problem if you use a popular search engine such as Google, which for most of us, that's our first inclination, right? We will Google the topic and we'll go find information. The challenge with that is, you're hit with so much, often in the millions of particular sites that you can visit. So how do you know which ones are accurate, which ones are the most beneficial to you? And often students will not, well, actually users, not just students, will not wade past the first page or two. The second big problem is, how do you know if the information is reliable? And I believe we covered this a couple of weeks ago, but if not, let's look at it again. This was a slide presentation in which we discussed how to evaluate sources if you are actually using an online popular search engine to find information. We talked about the fact that these are the most reliable types of sources, in that you know if it's a .gov, it comes from a government agency. If it's a .mil, it comes from a branch of the military. If it's a .edu, if that's the domain name and the site ends in .edu, then we know that it will be from an educational facility, but you've got to make sure that it's at the university level, because even kindergartens have their .edus. .organizations used to mean that it was an organization, but that's sort of gotten looser. And truthfully, as you can have a group, and as long as you pay a little money, you can get a .org. So the information may or may not be reliable. If you're unfamiliar with the organization, you have to do some additional kind of research to see if it's a lot reliable before you use that information. .com is the most common. It means commercial. Any of us can have one. And the problem with that, again, is how do you know if the information is reliable? And then a .net could be anything. And we talked about, if you want to know more, there are plenty of YouTube videos that talk about evaluating sources. So if you're confused about this. To evaluate source material, and once again, this is if you're using a popular search engine such as Google or Bing, you have to look at these 5 criteria. The first one has to do with accuracy. How reliable is the information? And truthfully, how do you know that? So often the way that you determine accuracy is if you're seeing the same facts in several different sources, and that's probably, it may well be reliable. Credibility has to do with the credentials of the person or the organization. So how do you know this person, the thing about opinions is that we all have one, and it's very easy to come across blogs online of people who are talking there, but they're not necessarily experts. They are not necessarily authorities in that field. Quite frankly, I have lots of opinions about lots of things, but I'm only probably an authority on a few. And one of the, where I've had the training, where I've had the experience. And so you would not want to quote me on things that I don't have, I just have an opinion about, right? So, and we talked about the way that you determine the credibility is you look for the about us, right? You can, or else you can Google the author's name. If it's an organization, they often have a board of directors, and you can look to see who sits on that board of directors. Do they have credentials? So you have to take these extra steps. Objectivity has to do with the degree of bias. In our increasingly divided culture, there is a lot of biased information, and often what happens with that is, with biased information, whether it be to the right or to the left, is that it's selective. It only picks up those facts that supports the personal opinion of that individual or that group, and it leaves out everything else. So there's no objectivity. You never want to build an entire paper or report using biased sources, because nothing shoots the credibility of an author faster than to only use people with whom he or she agrees. And that's fine, honestly, if you're talking to an audience that's on the same page, right? If you share common ground. But if you do not, then your audience will not even give credibility to what you're writing. Now, I do want to say that it is okay to introduce maybe if there's one or two sources and you know that it has a particular bias, as long as you acknowledge that bias and you don't build an entire paper on those types of sources, it's okay. So for example, by saying the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank that does research, or by saying the PETA, a liberal organization that are activists concerning animal rights. As long as you acknowledge what they are, then it actually kind of helps with your credibility as a writer to include one, two maximum of those types of sources. Currency has to do with how up-to-date the source is. And that may or may not matter. If you're looking at the history of a particular topic, then it's fine to go back beyond the past 5 years. But if you're looking at a topic in which there's a lot of recent information, a lot of recent things happening, for example, the immunization controversy about potentially getting your children vaccinated at certain ages causes autism and or other certain diseases or even death. That's fairly recent, and so you would not want to look back 10, 15 years. I think this has happened, started with some study that's been debunked in England and has really spread, and that's within, I think, the past 8 years or so. So, and then scope of coverage has to do with how comprehensive, how deep. Does it show rather than just tell? Especially online, there's a lot of what we call clickbait. Sites that will take what somebody else has written, kind of summarize it so there's no depth to it. They've done no original research, and then they'll put some sort of fantastic provocative title to get people to click on it. So scope of coverage is another criterion for evaluating source material. Now, this is only if you're using a popular search engine such as Google and Bing. And you've probably been told not to use Wikipedia by some English instructor. And there's a reason for that. Wikis are public sites. You, me, anybody can go and alter material and edit it and add to and that kind of thing. Wikipedia is just the most famous and the most comprehensive, the largest. But how do you know on any given day if the information that's provided is accurate? Now, I use Wikipedia just like everybody else to kind of get background information. And there are probably some courses and some instructors who don't care. You just want to make sure before you begin if that's the case, okay, with those instructors, with scope of coverage. With using Wikipedia. Okay, so one way to avoid having to evaluate sources is to use the GNTC library homepage and the databases that we subscribe to. You do not have to evaluate anything you find using these resources. So there are two ways to access the databases. The first one is under My Resources on the www.gntc.edu homepage. You'll notice when you hover over this tab, it opens up and there are quite a few options. And so we're going to select Library. The second way that you can actually access the Galileo databases is, if you'll look on our homepage, I include a tab that says Welcome to Galileo, and you select it and it will open. It should launch Galileo immediately. If it asks for any reason for your username and password, they are the exact same username and password that you use for everything else, for accessing your email, for getting online, to access Blackboard courses and so forth. When you launch from our homepage, the library homepage, this is what it will look like. And you have several options here. Research guides are some information, sort of some support information, some resources for particular classes. So for example, you know, how to log in, how to evaluate sources, which we've just been talking about, how to do research, how to cite sources for those of you who are struggling with documentation, if you haven't done much of it. And then you'll notice that we've got an English 1010 1101 page, and it does provide you with, for example, it talks about argumentation information. It talks and it gives you some information about how to write argumentation if that's your particular assignment. Going back though, I want to show you how to access Galileo and then how to do Primo, use Primo. You have a library scavenger hunt assignment that's going to help you walk through this information and let's give you some practice actually doing a little limited search. So to find Galileo, what you want to do is come under resources and guides. You'll notice if you hover over it, it opens up in the last one. And again, you've got a lot of places, different ways to access a variety of information. What I'm going to ask you to do is to, and by the way, you can access our textbooks here from OER at GNTC. Scroll down to the bottom and select Galileo homepage, and it will launch this homepage. Now, Galileo is was created within the University System of Georgia. Most universities, a lot of high schools use it in Georgia, and it's just this vast collection of databases. Databases are like file cabinets, essentially. And I like to think of Galileo as being like a shopping mall, like Hamilton Place Shopping Mall, like Town Center, like Walnut Square in Dalton. And it's comprised of a bunch of different shops, and each of the shops are like a database. And some of the shops are specialty shops, like you can only buy shoes there, you can only get sunglasses. And those would be the smaller databases that are devoted to a specific discipline, such as nursing. Then some of the larger databases are like department stores that have a little bit of everything. You can go in and you can buy cookware, and you can buy scarves, and you can buy shoes, you know. So it's got a little bit of everything. They're much larger. And so for this assignment, I'm going to introduce you to some of the larger ones. So what you'll do is you'll come into Galileo and you'll select Databases A to Z. The first one I want to show you, because it's the first one on your library scavenger hunt, is Credo reference. If you select C, and then Credo is, scroll down, and it is number 27. Select it to launch it. Credo is a big selection of reference material. Reference material are things like dictionaries and encyclopedias. So this would be what you would use instead of something like Wikipedia. Okay, we're going to do a basic search, and since I've mentioned that immunization, all right, we're going to do a search here. Now, you'll notice that I've got lots of options here, about 1,000 something. So what I can do is I can narrow this search by under subject. Let's just say I want definitions. And so scrolling down to general reference and clicking on this little arrow, notice that it opens up dictionaries and thesauri, general encyclopedias, bilingual dictionaries. I'm going to select this one, and it will now narrow my search under the subject search to just definitions. And so I'm going to select this first one, and here is the here's the definition. Now notice that this is my source. Okay, we call this the source. It's also the book, the publication, the American Heritage Student Science Dictionary, and when you actually get to the point where you're incorporating information, notice that it also gives you the actual bibliographic entry. So all you have to do, if you were like going to quote from this source in your paper, all you would have to do when you get to your references page is highlight this and then do a Control-C, which is a copy, or you can right-click it and copy, and then you would paste it into your references page. Okay, so that's just a little hint for the future. But here's your source, all right, and here's the definition. And I think that's I think I asked you to do is to come up with an abstract term. Abstract terms are terms that you cannot access through the senses, the sight, smell, taste, touch, and sound. So it's things like honor. It's things like poverty, because that differs, right, from country to country, sometimes from state to state. So it's once again, it's some term that you cannot approach through your senses. All right, so that's Credo reference. Okay, so we're going to go back out now, and we're going to go to a different database. And this is more the department store type database. You can either use A, Academic Search Complete, or P, ProQuest, and they are both department store type databases. They're really vast in their holdings. So we're going to select A. And then the second one is Academic Search Complete. Now its interface, it's the particular screen in which you do your search is a little bit different and a bit more comprehensive than Credo Reference. All right, Credo Reference is a good starting place, but you almost never want to use just Credo Reference to build a paper. It's a good place to get your definitions. It's a good place to look up sort of encyclopedic information or biographical information or quotations even. But this is where you will actually find more in-depth articles and more recent material often. All right, so let's just stay with the same issue that I mentioned before. And notice that it automatically pulls up some possible ideas here. And I'm going to use immunization, and I'm going to use what's called a Boolean operator and select another search term. So let's just say an autism. Now, when you use the, and once again, well, don't know where that went. Immunization, spell it correctly. Okay, there. This is called a Boolean operator, and you have three selections here, and, or not. And actually narrows your search because it will only return those documents that contain information on both of these two topics. So it limits, all right? If you use or, you're going to broaden your search. It will return everything it finds on immunization, everything it finds on autism, okay? Now for terms that are often confused for other terms, you can use not, and that'll help simplify. Now I'm going to continue to simplify by saying that I only want full text. I am not requiring that you use scholarly peer-reviewed journals. Those are journals that are usually written by experts in a field, and they are peer-reviewed means that several people in their field checked it for accuracy. I'm not requiring that you do that, but we do want full text because sometimes you'll just get like a summary of something. And I want, here under document type, I'm going to select, let's see, article. Now, if you don't want them to, if you don't want Academic Search Complete to return articles to you that are really lengthy, you can actually put in like less than, let's say, 10 pages, all right, less than 10. Other options, if I want to limit when it's published. So for example, if I want the most recent information, I could put January of 2015 to, let's just say, our current month, which is October 2019. And so I can limit that way. Language, of course, usually it's better because you will get a little bit of everything to select English, and then conduct my search. This actually narrows down to 22 different articles or sources. If I had left it and had not made some of those changes, I would have gotten hundreds. Okay, so that just saves you some time. Dying preventable deaths, the importance of immunization, science wins around in battle over vaccines in search of autism stories. So I'm going to look and see if I can find, let's go with this one. Vaccines do not cause autism, pediatricians fight back. So I'm going to select that. Now here's the author. You kind of have to dig through here. Here's the source, all right? An abstract is a summary. Never, ever, 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 ever quote from a summary without actually reading the article itself. But what the abstract will do is it will give you a summary of what the article is about. And then what I recommend to students is if you read this abstract and you have trouble if the diction is elevated, if it's written at a really high level and you have trouble understanding the abstract, quite frankly, you're probably going to have trouble understanding the article. So it would be better to look for something else. Okay. But to access the full article, if you look on here on the left-hand side, PDF full text will actually present the article as it appeared when it was published. HTML takes off anything fancy, all right? Takes off any pictures. It's just the text itself typed out. So I'm going to select PDF full text. And here's my article, okay? Now notice here on the right-hand side, we have these icons. So there are different things that you can do with this article. You can print it, all right? You can email it to yourself if you're not at home, or if you want to save it that way. If you have a folder open on your laptop or computer, you can save the article to a folder and come back to it. This one is particularly important. This is your citation tool. So if you select that, you want to scroll. Now, once again, they're all different types of documentation, MLA, APA, Chicago style, and so forth. You want to scroll because we're using APA until you find this. And then if you were actually including this article, quoting from it or paraphrasing from it, the way that you would document it on your references page and therefore in the paper itself is simply by highlighting this. And again, you can hold down the control key and press the C key to copy, and then hold down the control key and press the I think it's control P to paste it. Or you can right click, all right, and then you can put that directly into your paper. Here's the database number. If a paper source has a database number, a DOI number, you do not have to put the full retrieval information. That's enough right here, because honestly, anything that's been assigned a database number will not change. All right, you put retrieval information because if you're using a website, you want to give the web address, but also the reason you put the date is because that means that information may be subject to change. So retrieves, today's date, October 30th, from 2019 and then the web address, or you can just simply say academic search complete. Okay. So hopefully that should help you complete that part of the library research scavenger hunt. Now I'm going to go back and talk to you for a minute about Primo. Primo is our card catalog. It's automated. It's how you actually find books in the library. So there are other ways, but I'm trying to backtrack out of Galileo. And I may have to go back to our original, so just give me a second. All right, there we are. By the way, on this original homepage, you'll notice if you scroll to the bottom that it gives different campuses, when they're open, when they're closed, how to phone in, where they're located. Okay, and you can select that across here. Now, Primo contains more than just the books that GNTC has on its shelves. It also can access information that's at other technical colleges, and you can order something online from any particular source. If you find it and it's on a different campus, or even if it's on another technical college's campus, we have a lending agreement with them, so all you have to do is order it, and it's usually here within 24 to 48 hours. Okay. So Primo looks like this. when you select it. And it's telling you a little bit about its capabilities. But let's just say I want to find a book on if we have them, just staying with my same term, immunizations. And let's see what I can do with an advanced search. Okay. All items. I just want books, and any language. I just want English. And let's say I want anything published in the last 5 years. So that once again, anytime that you start changing things like this, you narrow your search, and so instead of getting so much back, you'll get less. All right, I'm going to do my search. And here's a book. Notice that it's available at the Catoosa County Campus Library. So this is part of what the assignment asks you to do. Where's the book available? And then this is called your the call numbers. All right, they're in parentheses available after it tells you that it's a circulating book. So this would be the title. Actually, I'm going to select this one, the vaccine debate. Okay, I'm going to select this. There's my author. All right, it tells me that it's available at the Walker County campus. I can check it out because it's a circulating book. And then here is the call number, which is what's asked for on your scavenger hunt. Okay, so you should be able to do the information there. I'll find the information there and fill that in. Now, the last thing the scavenger hunt asks you to do is it asks you to find a source using a popular search engine and to make sure that it is a reliable source. So that's where you would have to use the evaluation criteria. And also in the scavenger hunt, it asks you to justify. Explain to me why you've decided that this particular source that you found using Google or Bing or Firefox or some other search engine, why did you decide this was reliable? Okay. All right. Next week we will continue. Every week we're trying to build on the assignments that you had previously, so we'll continue with our research discussions. But this should be enough to get you started and help you through doing the library scavenger hunt sheet. Should you have any questions, as always, please email me or call me.